Well, I think there's been quite a significant change in attitude generally by the public, because we not only have a major strike now, there's the NUMSA strike, we no longer have this concentration on one strike. There seems to be a much greater awareness of what underlies and what can be done to stop the problems that we have on the labor front, on the economic front generally. But, and I think it's summed up really by one of the respondents to the Q&A on this platform, by Mololeke Lux. He noted, and I've put it down here, we will eat strikes and sleep protests until something changes. And you know, that's correct, because there's been, this sort of sentiment has come through from all sorts of people, from the retail sector, security sector, just on this Q&A, but the same thing on various broadcasts and other media. We keep hearing this idea of how can we change? How can we get to change something? But in the middle of this came an extraordinary, on the Q&A session, from Henry Terblanche, who actually brought out a very well-researched, from the Fatherhood Institute, I understand, argument for a paternity leave for fathers. That every father at the birth of a child should get 10 days paternity leave. Very good argument. He has taken it to politicians who've ignored it, but some of the trade unions have already taken that on. And why I mention it, it ties in very neatly, I think, with one of the arguments that's beginning to emerge more and more, and that is that the underlying problem that we face with unemployment, with the economy, etc., is the growth in population. And this was raised very much by one of our respondents on the Q&A, on Fin24, Glyn Morgan, and he noted, and I read, maybe this debate should come out in the open and get stirred. And he referred specifically to the very strongly enforced one-child policy employed by Mao Zedong in China. He was also supported by Hannes Pick, who also felt that this was a major problem. And I quote him too, "Earth as we know it can only sustain a number of people, and if we transgress this number, we're in dire straits." Well, I wonder if this isn't a case really of blaming the victims. I was criticized, for example, for quoting Mahatma Gandhi as saying that the earth provides enough for everybody's needs, but not enough for everybody's greeds. I used that as a shorthand for where the labor movement actually stands in this regard, where the labor movement generally says the problem is not a question of population, it's a problem of distribution, of resources that already exist. That the system itself encourages massive waste and despoilation of resources. So that's the area I think I'm going to concentrate on in my Inside Labour column, which you'll be able to read tomorrow on this platform, Fin24, and in print, in the City Press, on Sunday. But I want to hear what you feel about this. I mean, the whole question of population, of birth control, of family planning, is a very controversial one, particularly at this time in Africa. And we've had a number of examples. Think back, for example, to, the One China policy, but also in One Child policy in China, I beg your pardon, but also in India, where, for example, on railway stations, men were encouraged to have that vital snip, a vasectomy, and in return were given a transistor radio. That's an interesting thing. But what is also interesting is, for example, in this very country, the National Party pleaded with Afrikaner women to procreate massively because black South Africans, the population was growing faster. But then we also had the same sort of situation with Hitler, Joseph Stalin, who did the same thing. We wanted more of our children, we wanted more of this, and stopped abortion, for example. So it's a very vexed problem, and I'm going to deal with that in terms of the economics, in terms of the fact that Thomas Robert Malthus, in 1798, who started this whole thing by saying that if the population grew, it would grow faster than the means to sustain it. But then he thought, of course, that there would be some divine intervention through pestilence and plague that would kill it off. I think Malthus was completely wrong. I think what I said about Gandhi is probably right. But I want to hear what you say. What do you think? It's a complex problem, I know. But we want to hear what you say, and please send in your comments to editor@fin24.co.za. fin24.com. That's editor at fin24.com. And for this week, that's all from me. Cheers.